Good morning, good afternoon, or good night. Wherever you may be tuning in, know that we're so glad that you're joining us today. We have a special service planned as we bring a close to our Promised Land series. As we've explored the promises God has for people living in the ups and downs of life, we're wrapping things up today with an opportunity to consider what these promises might mean for our neighborhoods and our communities. Pastor Adam will bring a condensed teaching to us out of Isaiah 61 and Luke 4. And then we'll join Pastor Richard for a conversation with some of the members of his team who have been a part of strengthening our partnership with local community organization. They'll share some of what they've been up to and what they've been learning. So today, you'll learn some principles for serving and learn how Grace Chapel in particular has sought to join hands with some of our local communities and organizations as they seek the flourishing of our neighborhoods. We hope something will spark for you today as you consider how you might be sensing an invitation to serve wherever you are. I'll share a few next steps towards the end of our service and highlight a little bit about what's going on here at Grace these days and how you can get involved. But now, I invite you to quiet your mind for just a moment. If you're moving, maybe take this moment to pause and take a breath. God, we invite you to speak to us today. We lean on your promises to make all things new. Help us to let go of the things, the habits, the attitudes that spiral us deeper into the problems we face. Help us to lean on your promise of making all things new and restored and reconciled. And may that help us to live as free, as beloved. Speak. We are listening.
I saw Satan fall like lightning. I saw darkness run for cover. But the miracle that I just can't get over, my name is registered in heaven. I believe in signs and wonders. I have resurrection power. Still the miracle that I just can't get over, my name is registered in heaven. Yeah, my praise belongs to you forever. This is my testimony from death to life, 'cause grace rewrote my story. I'll testify, by Jesus Christ the righteous, I'm justified. This is my testimony. This is my testimony. Hey. Come together, sons and daughters, bought with blood and washed in water. Sing the praises of the Spirit, Son and Father. Our God will finish what He started. Yes, our God will finish what He started. This is my testimony from death to life, 'cause grace rewrote my story. I'll testify, by Jesus Christ the righteous, I'm justified. This is my testimony. This is my testimony. If I'm not dead, you're not done. Greater things are still to come. Oh, I believe. If I'm not dead, you're not done. Greater things are still to come. Oh, I believe. If I'm not dead, you're not done. Greater things are still to come. Oh, I believe. If I'm not dead, you're not done. Greater greater things are still to come. Oh, I believe. Hey. This is my testimony from death to life. 'Cause grace rewrote my story. I'll testify. By Jesus Christ the righteous, I'm justified. This is my testimony. Oh, I'm alive. This is my testimony from death to life. 'Cause grace rewrote my story. I'll testify. By Jesus Christ the righteous, I'm justified. This is my testimony. This is my testimony.
For the last 2 months, we've spent time exploring life in an in-between world. We've looked at how we are living in between the promises of God and their ultimate fulfillment. And we've done that with the help of the biblical prophet and writer Isaiah, who was also talking to a people living in between promises and ultimate fulfillment. So today, as we come to the end of our Promised Land series, we want to take a moment and ask ourselves, what's next? What can we do with what we've heard from God? How do we respond to his goodness? And how do we actually respond with the goodness of God to the numerous needs found in the world around us? Because there are huge needs in the world around us. While statistically the average North American enjoys a standard of living unmatched in history, 40% of the world's population lives on less than $2 a day. Over 1 billion people live in desperate poverty. I'm not sure how you hear or feel when you hear that, but I'm guessing that you have a desire to do something. We all have this common desire to do something when we see a need like that. However, despite our good intentions, if we try to solve complex issues in the world without proper diagnosis or plan, we actually might be contributing to long-term harm. So currently, right now, over 100 Grace Chapel folks are actually working in small groups through the book When Helping Hurts: How to Alleviate Poverty Without Hurting the Poor and Yourself. And this morning, I'm going to share just a taste of that content. So with that in mind, we're going to do things just a little bit differently today as we talk about community engagement. I'm going to speak for a short time, and then we're actually going to see some of our community engagement in action. And then we're going to hear from some of our good friends who are working in their local community. And throughout all of this, we're going to ask ourselves a few simple questions. Where is God already at work in the community around me? And how can I join in? So one of Jesus' most important early moments in his ministry came during a worship service that he actually participated in at his home synagogue. His whole family would have turned out for this. I mean, right? Mary and Joseph's boy was back in town. He was a rabbi now. He had disciples and people following him. He'd been reportedly doing miracles in other towns. So people were curious. And who does Jesus quote from during this particular moment? Isaiah, that same prophet we've spent the last 2 months with. We read this in Luke chapter 4. When he came to the village of Nazareth, this is Jesus, his boyhood home, he went as usual to the synagogue on the Sabbath and stood up to read the scriptures. The scroll of Isaiah the prophet was handed to him. He unrolled the scroll and found the place where it was written, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, for he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He sent me to proclaim that captives will be released, that the blind will see, and that the oppressed will be set free, and that the time of the Lord's favor has come." Jesus is actually quoting from Isaiah 61 here. And after reading from Isaiah, Jesus follows it up with this comment. He rolls up the scroll, he hands it back to the attendant, and he sits down. And it says that all the eyes in the synagogue looked at him intently. Then he began to speak to them. And he said, "The scripture you've just heard has been fulfilled this very day." We don't have time to fully unpack everything that's going on here, but I need you to notice something critical from both Isaiah and from Jesus. The word used for good news here in Isaiah is the verb form, right, an action word of the word we commonly translate as gospel or good news. Jesus' disciples, they will soon be sharing this gospel, this good news of Jesus Christ, and they're going to share it, with the whole known world. And we are here today, still continuing to share this good news of Jesus. But here is Jesus, through Isaiah, to his whole hometown at the synagogue, saying that the good news is a verb. It's not just something we intellectually agree with, like a spiritual test. Check the box. Yes, I love Jesus. Yes, I love taking care of people. But it's something that is transformative, it is healing, and it is concrete. Jesus is telling his whole home community that the words of Isaiah are being fulfilled right here and right now. That he came to preach good news to the poor by proclaiming freedom for prisoners, by giving recovery of sight for the blind, rescuing the oppressed, by proclaiming the year of the Lord's favor. So here's the critical thing I want us to understand. God cares for the poor, so I must also care for the poor. And if I don't, I'm not actually following Jesus. But caring for the materially poor and knowing how to help are two totally different things. The authors of When Helping Hurts, they lay out this compelling case that knowing how to help starts with understanding this simple concept that we are all the same. What they mean by that is that God he's fundamentally relational. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, they are eternally in relationships. And human beings created in the image of God were therefore also created to be relational and in relationship. They lay out 4 key relationships for every human being. Our relationships with God, with ourselves, with others, and with creation. And then those relationships, they're broken when sin enters the picture. But they aren't only broken for the materially poor, are they? They're broken for everyone. For the materially poor and for the materially non-poor. If you want to dig deeper into each of these breakdowns, I highly encourage reading the book When Helping Hurts. But we all know we have broken relationships with God, with ourselves, with others, and creation, don't we? I met a new neighbor once who said to me, they said that we're not the kind of neighborhood where people actually know each other. And I remember wrestling for a little while with that idea and thinking, okay, if we're not a neighborhood where we know each other, are we really a neighborhood when we're not being neighbors to one another? We all have broken relationships. Too often, though, those of us who are not materially poor seem to think that we have all the answers. Like we can fix the world. We have something of a God complex, which is in and of itself a broken relationship with God. So the major issue here is this. Those who are trying to help, they really are well-meaning, right? They want to help. But when people who think too much of themselves try to help those in need, the first group ends up building itself up, right? I'm doing such great work. People need me. Look what we've done. Well, the second group finds themselves torn down. I knew I couldn't help myself, couldn't do it myself. I can't take care of myself, let alone my kids. And this is a fundamental mismatch. So this is why a number of years ago, as we as a church have been on this journey, we changed how we did a few different things. One of those is that we changed how we spoke about service trips. For years, we've called them mission trips, as has much of the Western church. But now we call them cross-cultural learning experiences. And we do it intentionally because we want to know that we go as learners. We go asking, where is God already at work in this community? And how can we join in? We ask questions like, what do they do better than we do? How can we learn from this community? And we intentionally join with local churches and organizations to further their efforts rather than our own ideas. It's also why we've begun a new effort to serve our communities through community engagement teams. Again, rather than coming to our communities and telling them what we think they need, we're joining in with local agencies that are already working to address needs and asking them, how can we help you? Because the first step in all of this is understanding that we are all the same. A few weeks ago, Pastor Chris Hayden reminded us in a sermon that we are all broken and we are all beloved. Our brokenness might manifest in slightly different ways, but we are all broken. And it is from that starting point, that common ground, that we can then just begin to come together to do something good. To quote the authors of When Helping Hurts, poverty alleviation is about reconciling relationships, a process in which people, both materially poor and non-poor, move closer to living in a right relationship with God, self, others, and the rest of creation. So how can we come alongside the materially poor and work together to restore our common brokenness? Well, first, we need to recognize and acknowledge our own broken relationships, that we are all the same. With that first step, that critical insight, then we can begin to help. So let's take some time to see some of our community engagement currently in action. And then we'll hear from our friends on the Grace Chapel Boston Project team as they work to come alongside those living in Dorchester in the name of Jesus.
Each of our campuses have formed a campus community engagement team to get outside the walls of our church to serve our surrounding communities. These teams have researched the needs in their community, the assets they have in their campus, and have formed a relationship with a town organization that is meeting that need. They're also building a team of volunteers to work alongside these organizations. These teams recently were able to contribute some financial support to these organizations. Our Wilmington campus is working with One Wilmington to help serve local families, as well as Fostering Hope to serve people and agencies engaged in foster care. Watertown is serving alongside the Wayside Youth and Family Services, as well as the Watertown Food Pantry. Our Lexington campus is working with the Lexington Youth and Family Services and with Lex RAP, the Lexington Refugee Assistance Program, as they resettle Afghan families. Our Foxborough campus is working with the Foxborough YMCA, as well as Lynn Ministry. And our East Lexington campus has joined up to serve with Arlington Eats, Food Pantry, and Greater Somerville Homeless Coalition. And we also have two all-campus initiatives. One that is working with our partner Boston Project in Dorchester to bring shalom to their neighborhood. And another working alongside Emmanuel Gospel Center as they support the Afghan family resettlement. If you would like more information or to volunteer with your campus engagement team, go to grace.org/community engagement. About 10 years ago, Grace Chapel began a relationship with Boston Project. This is an organization in Dorchester started by Paul and Glenna Malcolmus. And they felt God's nudge to move into Dorchester, and they adopted a 15 street block, and along with their neighbors have been working for these years to bring shalom, peace, human flourishing to that neighborhood. And about a year ago, we felt here at Grace Chapel a nudge to deepen our relationship with Boston Project. And so we formed a steering team, and I'm here this morning with 3 of the members of that 10-member team. And so this is Tim and Rhonda and Owen, and I'm going to ask them a few questions about what it's been like to be a part of this team. So let's start, Rhonda, with you. Where have you seen God at work in this relationship and with Boston Project?
Well, this past summer, I was working at the Elmhurst Park Bible Club, and I could see right from the start when the families dropped off the children and everything, how the staff took a total interest in the families. They wanted to know what was going on in the family, how people were doing, not just a matter of sign this child in. So God was definitely in the middle of it. And the older kids that came, they acted really cool, like it was too cool for them, but or they were too cool for it, but yet they were the ones who wanted to know, can I be on the leadership team next year? Can I be, doing this or doing that? And when it came to Bible study time, they were the ones asking these amazing questions and to, You just could see God was working inside of them. And then this summer we also went on a prayer walk around the whole neighborhood, and the whole team came, and it was great, and we could just see God everywhere. We could see God, how he had worked with the neighbors and the Boston Project team to help develop housing, develop parks, develop gardens, murals, gorgeous murals that just showed God's love and hope, and it was just, you could see God right there.
That's beautiful. Tim, we've learned a lot about ourselves in this process. Tell us a little bit of what have you learned about yourself?
Yes, absolutely. So I learned that my understanding and my perspectives are very limited by my own boundaries. For example, I learned that I need to redefine where my neighborhood is. So I don't live in Dorchester, so Dorchester is not my neighborhood. But I learned that the way that God defines and works isn't always limited by your close proximity of where you live, but rather there's a constant invitation of God is nudging you to be part of someone's life and also be engaged with them. So for example, Boston Project and Dorchester has been the two most common and consistent theme in my life here in US. When I first came down to Boston many years ago, my very first place was actually in Dorchester. I rented a room and lived there for about 2 years. And then I actually met Paul and Glenna in Boston Project almost 20 years ago from my previous church. And then when I came to Boston, Grace Chapel, through Global Awareness Week, I was able to engage with Boston Project, and all three of my kids participated in summer CCLE program. So as you can see that somehow God's constant invitation of Boston Project and Dorchester has been in my life. And after I joined this group, I just realized that, wow, this theme is not over yet, but it's being crystallized to the place where God is showing me even further of his will and his love for the city. So I'm just there's a lot of ups and downs and twists and turns in God's story, but there's also a very consistent running theme that God is constantly inviting you to be part of.
That's beautiful. Owen, one of the things we've talked a lot about as a team is just how beautiful this neighborhood is in terms of just the richness of these people's lives, and you know, can you describe what we've learned in terms of all the assets that they have?
Yeah, what we've learned was an awful lot. But one thing that I've learned, it's a community of strong and caring people who love that neighborhood. And the neighborhood is working hard. There are different aspects of living in the inner city that can be a little bit tough. But they have been working and continue to work at that to make it a place where you would be happy to live and to raise a family. I was there also in the summer, and there were a bunch of kids drawing on the street. The police had blocked off the whole block, and they made a mural on the street. It was huge. But they were all excited about being involved in it. And then we went on that walk. We found another mural that was on the wall. And they're so eager to tell you about it. You know, this would happen and that happened. It was just wonderful. But another thing that I have done, because of the people, I've been going to church there. You know, I go to Grace Chapel, and then I leave Grace Chapel, I drive into Dorchester to go into the church, because it's like coming home. It is really, it's warm and it's wonderful. And I'm greeted like I've been there forever.
That's beautiful. I know one of the things that I naively thought when we deepened this relationship was that I would go and help. I would go and be the savior. And what I've learned is that the first thing I need to ask is what are the needs, but what are the beauties and the assets that this community has. And I came to realize that they have a lot more sometimes than I have in terms of their values and their love for one another. So as Adam was talking in the message this morning about our own poverty, there's poverty in my neighborhood that I don't see in their neighborhood because they really love and care for one another. So there are ways that people can be involved at Grace Chapel, and what are some of the ways that come to your mind that people could volunteer? Any thoughts?
Well, going over to the church. The church is, they worship outside until the weather gets so bad. Then they go into the Boys and Girls Club and they worship there. They need to have it set up. They need to have it, they have different tables where they'll put displays on and have people go up and walk through the displays and to see what's going on. So they always need that. And they need people to care for the children. They have a wonderful children's program, but they always need people to help out in different ways.
Great. And any other thoughts?
Well, they also need mentors. They are doing a mentoring program for the older kids, and these kids really could use some good mentoring, somebody to come alongside, because they come from all different kinds of homes. And the thing about volunteering there, though, is that you learn so much from them to bring home to your own neighborhood and to just keep spreading God's word everywhere. I just learned so much from them.
Yeah.
Anything, Tim?
I definitely echo that thoughts. So this is an opportunity for you to be benefited through this relationship. So if you did Be the Bridge or when helping Hurt's small group, this opportunity of volunteering really completes the discussion and the things that you learn from the book and from the small group by getting into the action. Because you have to be part of Jesus' feet and hand, and that's where you could fully experience how the Christ works in our lives. And this relationship, building relationship is something, it's not going to be comfortable. You might have to break out of your comfort zone. It's going to take your time, and it might take some resources as well, but it's going to be so much worth it. Speaking of building the bridge, we know that all the aging old bridges that now the Massachusetts is spending over billions of dollars to replace the Sagamore Bridge or the Bourne Bridge, it's something that we need to maintain and we need to constantly invest on. I don't think we have $1 billion budget for this project, but I could be assured that the return will be even greater, that we could actually make something out of this.
Tim, I remember very distinctly one night when we had our team meeting, you made a statement that really caught, I think, all of us off guard in a good way. And it was about stepping out into your own neighborhood. Can you recreate that?
Right. So the whole premises here is that we are spiritually strong, and therefore we are going to the place where they need our help, which is great starting point, and there's nothing wrong with that. But once you actually get engaged and have built a relationship, you begin to realize that they have much more than what you have. And then you come back home and try to see your family and see your neighborhood. That's when you realize that, wow, the poverty is actually here. We are so spiritually poor, and there's no relationship, and they're so not engaged within our own family or even nearby neighbors. So that's a big contrast and big gap that I was able to see that. So Rhonda talked about, we did a prayer walk in Dorchester, which was fantastic. The weather was great. But then I began to wonder, when was the last time that I ever walked within my own neighborhood and pray for my neighbors? Never. So I felt that was an invitation from God, that's where we need to start changing our perception and our attitude, that we need to recreate Boston Project within our own neighborhood and our own towns as well.
Yeah, that was powerful. As we did do that walk, we did that with the Boston Project team, and you realize that they did this a lot. They walked and prayed around their neighborhood, and when you said that at that meeting, I thought, oh man, when's the last time I walked around my neighborhood and prayed for my neighbors? So that was really a powerful insight. Well, thank you so much, and I hope you've been able to see and hear the joy and enthusiasm that we have been experiencing, building relationships with these new friends in Dorchester. And if you would like to be a part of this effort, you could please email me, richard@grace.org. I want to encourage you to go Google Boston Project. You will be amazed at the flourishing that you see. And yet their needs that they have asked us to help them with, so we're really looking for more volunteers that can be academic mentors. There's a school there called Boston Tech in this neighborhood. There's this church, neighborhood church there. It's a beautiful relationship that we have now with Boston Project, and we would love to invite you to be a part of it. Email me at richard@grace.org.
On the long journey, be near me, Lord, in the valley. Be near me, Lord, I pray. Oh, do not abandon this sinner in the deep valley. In the dry desert, be near me, Lord, in
I wonder if you're feeling any nudges or inspiration for how you might join hands with some of the good work being done where you already live. If you want some ideas for what that's looked like through some of the connections we have at Grace, you can visit our page at grace.org/community engagement. You can learn more about the work Pastor Richard and so many others have done to facilitate opportunities for Grace Chapel to serve. And maybe you want to join in with some of the work that has been happening as a way of making a difference in our local area. You can find out more at that same page or through our app. And I also want to take this opportunity to let you know that the season of Lent is upon us. Lent is the 40 days leading up to Easter and is one of my favorite times in the life of the church, as it's an opportunity to orient our hearts, bodies, and souls in an intentional, however haphazard way as we anticipate Easter morning and all the new life that brings. Lent begins with Ash Wednesday, and we'll be hosting a service at our Lexington campus at 7 p.m., which will also be streaming live online. And then next Sunday, March 6th, we'll begin our new series called Changemaker. We'll be exploring the events of the final week of Jesus' life and ministry as we consider some of the unlikely ways that Jesus went about changing the world. You can learn more about this and other Easter happenings at grace.org/Easter 2022. And finally, we have a group leader training coming up Saturday, March 12th. So if you lead a group or would like to explore leading a group, we'll be providing a 2-hour training focused around leading challenging conversations. You can register for this at grace.org/events. May the Spirit be upon you as you proclaim good news to the poor, release to the captive, sight to the blind, and freedom to the oppressed. Go with power and go in peace.